Welcome to the Dynasty Academy. Michael Washington. Mark is being a pompous ass before we came on air, and Mark Ongst.
I mean, you are. I'm not. I mean, you are.
Eli Manuel.
Why would you draft a wide receiver, too?
Eli, you can cut this out.
You could leave it in, too.
Restart.
Kyler Murray has a fantastic arm. It's just the decision-making for him, for me. Michael Vick just made better decisions, I feel like, overall.
Makes sense. I said 1 or 2 inches, growing 1 or 2 inches, and you're like...
And he's still going...
I have leagues on too many apps. I don't know what to follow.
Welcome to the Dynasty Academy class is in session. Wow, that was much harder for me than I thought it was going to be. I'm Michael Washington. This is Mark Ongst. We are here again to talk about anything and everything Dynasty C2C and Devi related as well, of course, as normal. Tonight we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. Instead of focusing on actual players and positions, our primary subject in this case is going to be talking about the new offensive coordinators with their teams and what the fantasy outlook could be for the 2024 season. Because I don't know about you, Mark, but for me, coaching is a underrated part of football, and real world football obviously affects fantasy football, and you need to have the right system and the right scheme to be successful. And
I mean, yeah, look at Atlanta. You have a terrible head coach who is ruining 3 top 10 offensive picks. Well, and he's gone now, so he ruined 3 top 10 offensive picks. But before we get to that, I got to give Eli a shout out for that opening segment there, the intro. That's Eli's editing skills from our previous episodes of Dynasty Academy. And all our little our snippets.
Yeah, shout out to Eli for the audio portion of that. Shout out to Sam for the visual, the music in the background as well, and the awesome backdrop that you have here. Thank you so much, Sam. As I was always here on the Shady Sports Network. Thank you as well again for giving us a platform for the Dynasty Academy, and being able to discuss this crazy game that we play that makes me question my sanity every year as well. I don't know about you, Mark, but
sometimes. Definitely does sometimes.
Sometimes. I feel like it's every year I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing?
Nah, sometimes I love it. So.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Anyway, so tonight we want to discuss a little bit of outlook 2024. Obviously, free agency still hasn't happened, so there's still a lot of things that can happen with this, moving forward. And then, the draft obviously changes a lot of outcomes and a lot of outlooks for things. So this is 100% pure speculation, assumptions based on where direction we think we're going to go with some of these teams. And obviously what the roster looked like at the end of the 2023-24 season. And kind of just at least get an idea, because I feel like in Dynasty land, it's never too early to try to get a game plan as to what you want to do with certain teams. I don't know how that is for you or not, but coaching is a big part of this, because we've seen some talented guys in the wrong system and what's happened, right? Like we've seen it before.
It's what makes dynasty so difficult sometimes, because things change so quickly year to year. We look at the Patriots and we look at just this descending talent pool from that team, and it's, let's hope nobody gets drafted there. Let's look at we don't want offensive players, wide receivers to go there. And now Bill Belichick is gone, and it's like, well, wait, what do we do now? Are we excited about it? Are we hesitant about it? Is it something you have to change up at this point? Is the philosophy going to stay the same? I mean, Belichick was the decision maker, the coach, the everything for that team, and now it's a whole new group of people. The other day they announced I think 3 or 4 different people to be running the talent portion of that team, with not just the GM and the coach at this point. They have a whole bunch now instead of just one guy making terrible decisions and at this point riding the coattails of Tom Brady. People want to discuss, but Brady went somewhere else and was super successful. Bill kind of did nothing after Tom left. So if Bill can maybe reinvent himself, because somebody's going to hire him next year, we already know that, but I just don't know how it's going to be.
Well, I mean, I think
Like,
it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit of an unfair shake to say he did nothing because when Josh McDaniels was still the offensive coordinator there in Mac Jones's rookie year, they made the playoffs. Now they lost, but they made the playoffs that year. It was
COVID
a
year.
it was well, but they still they made the playoffs that year. It wasn't a great year. Don't get me wrong, but Mac Jones is a situation where he's now going on his fourth offensive coordinator in 4 years. Like we've discussed it before with Alex
Was
Smith.
a defensive coordinator, by the way, calling the offense at one point.
Yeah, that's his second year. The sophomore year when the learning curve is greater in the rookie to sophomore year, Bill Belichick decided to hand the offensive reins over to a defensive coordinator and defensive coach in Matt Patricia. And we saw what he couldn't do as a head coach and what he barely could do as a defensive coach with Philadelphia this past year. And now that learning curve, the spot where quarterbacks learn the most, was taken away from Mac, and we saw the regression of what's happened. Even when he had Bill O'Brien, who was his offensive coordinator at Alabama, and got him drafted into the first round, we saw how much of a regression that was from that learning curve because he was hung out to dry by that coaching staff. Now, I'm not saying Mac
Yeah.
Jones has gone on to be a fantastic, great whatever, but coaching is extremely important. Alex Smith is one of the prime examples of that. Like you mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago, how much Jordan Love was not impressive for you coming out of college, right? So him spending 5 years in the same system, same situation behind Aaron Rodgers, he got to learn and grow. But the most important thing for him is stability at that coaching position. It's the same staff, same system that he has had for 5 years, even as a backup, that allowed him to grow, and you saw his growth from week 1 to week 18 this year. It's really important. I can't stress it enough.
I think it's why McVay has been as successful as he's been because yes, they continue to lose coordinators, but he's bringing guys with him who have a philosophy similar to his, I believe.
Mhm.
So they just integrate in right away. It's this constant changing of coaching staffs and coaches, and we draft a rookie quarterback to then have four different offensive coordinators. We talk about Baker Mayfield. It
Baker
was a
Mayfield's another one.
revolving door of how many different coordinators he had, and still happening to him. Sucks for the guy. I mean, great for the OC from Tampa this year to get a head coaching job, but it would have been nice for Baker to have maybe another year with the same guy. Luckily, it sounds like he had some input for his new OC, but who knows if the Browns could have kept coaching staffs and things like that. It's what is odd about Pittsburgh because it's the same head coach for the last 20 years now.
Right.
20, 19
Yeah,
years.
sounds like that, yeah.
But yet they have this roller coaster of offensive play, and especially since losing Ben, like clearly Ben was the reason made Mike Tomlin look really good. But now we move on from Matt Canada to Matt Canada Light, possibly.
And
So
I said that about Arthur Smith to some people, and some people said I'm nuts because Arthur Smith this, Arthur Smith that, rushing league, something, I don't know. I don't see it with Arthur Smith, but
I mean,
I mean,
and again, he had one good year with Tennessee, that with Derrick Henry,
right.
with Tannehill coming over. So maybe the OC he's better at. I just we'll see. But for Pittsburgh, it's a head scratching move. outside of we just really want to run the ball, maybe. So we brought in the guy to do it. I don't know. For
I
then,
just
you'd
didn't
think a flashy hire would have made more sense.
But even then, I still didn't understand why they just didn't keep the OC that was there. Because what was working worked with Mason Rudolph down the stretch. Yeah, that's
You
what I
mean
mean.
the
Like
interim after Matt Canada.
the interim offensive coordinator after Matt Canada, like it was working. So I don't know why. I mean, they were running the ball with Najee Harris. They were opening things up with Mason Rudolph, which if you insert Kenny Pickett there, who the hell cares? I mean, it's basically the same thing. Like, you know, like you, you know, Deontay Johnson was finally getting his love, and George Pickens was involved in the offense, and like I didn't understand why you just wouldn't keep that continuity there, and why you'd go outside and bring somebody in who is at best suspect, I guess. So anyway, Pittsburgh wasn't really going to be on our list of talking about, but we got on the subject of Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh. Mark and I agreed, pardon me, pre-show that we were going to do what, 2 offensive coordinators that we liked and 1 offensive coordinator situation that we didn't like as far as the hiring was concerned this year.
Yes.
Mark, I did change one of mine. I'll talk about that when we get to it. I was on the fence about whether or not I wanted to do it, and I decided to change one of mine. So how do you want to start this? You want to start with like? We'll start with the like. You go first. I thought you had some interesting choices with the like. So we'll go with your first like.
So my first choice, the probably one of my favorite hires is Zach Robinson, the new offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Part of that is the pieces that are there from the Arthur Smith era. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts at tight end. You know, whether he's good or not, he's at least a weapon. The quarterback situation is unsettled. But Zach Robinson comes from Los Angeles Rams. That's the only team he's coached with. He's been there since 2019 as their quarterback coach. He then was their wide receiver coach. He went back to the quarterback coach, moved on to the passing game quarterback coach the last 2 years. That's an offense that Stafford has looked great in. So that there's an option. Okay, so maybe Atlanta goes with the veteran route. I don't mind it. Go get Russell Wilson. I mean, clearly Denver doesn't like him. See if Russ can do something. Go get Justin Fields. Because put Justin Fields in with Bijan and Drake out there. That sounds great. Coming from a guy who clearly was able to learn from McVay, gain trust from McVay to be put in these positions every year, and those position groups all played well. Stafford, Cooper Kupp was the Triple Crown winner the year this guy was one of a wide receiver coach for them.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua this past year was a 5th round rookie, I believe.
Mm-hmm. 5th round.
Who is going to win rookie? Well, he's probably not going to win rookie of the year because Stroud's going to win it. But who probably should win rookie of the year because
he'll win on the NFC side.
Award.
He'll win on the NFC side.
They have one for each. Okay.
They do one for overall, and they break it down AFC and NFC. I actually think he's already won the NFC side. So
yeah, and had the best rookie wide receiver season ever, and it's because the offense that is played in Los Angeles has always catered well to wide receivers who can get open, create separation across the middle, catch the ball, and just do something with it. And Puka is so much stronger than Cooper. So he does even more with the ball once he gets it. So it's the pieces around Zach Robinson and where Zach Robinson comes from. This will be the first time he's an offensive coordinator, so we don't know really anything about him for that. But we've seen these guys who get their first year and have fresh ideas. So I'm super excited to see with all those weapons and whatever they bring in, whatever, it's the quarterback. That team needs a quarterback. Desmond Ridder is just not the guy. Taylor Heineke is not the guy. Marcus Mariota was not the guy. So go get someone good, Atlanta. Get a good quarterback to play with those weapons, and this could be an exciting team, even though they're in the NFC South and they're going to lose twice to Tampa. every other game they could look great.
Yeah, the Buccaneers fan says that, of course. I'm excited about this too. Like I did not pick Zach Robinson as one of my two because I had a feeling that you may go there, so I decided to try to split it up a little bit so we could cover a couple more of these hires. But for me, Zach Robinson was one of those situations where coming from underneath this Rams tree and this Sean McVay like coaching carousel or coaching tree, if you want to call it that, however you want to say it. I like the fact that it's Raheem Morris that he came over with because they worked together while they were at the Rams. And like you said, Zach Robinson has only been with the Rams. Raheem Morris has been there for a couple of years. So there's a relationship there, even with one on the defense, one on the offensive side. But it also shows me that Raheem Morris, as a defensive coach, felt comfortable enough to say, here's the reins to the offense. This is now your baby, right? Because we don't always get that. You know what I mean? Like you don't always get that with a defensive guy. Like a defensive guy kind of brings in an offensive coordinator, and then like it's a guy with experience because it was a guy that they worked with years ago or whatever it may be. This is literally a new hire underneath a defensive-minded coach, and it shows me that he trusts him to have this offense and do things with it, right? Like, if I'm Kyle Pitts, if I'm Drake London, and if I'm Bijan Robinson, I'm ecstatic right now. Now, Drake London, I'm still a little bit iffy about, even in this system. Whatever the system may be, because if Zach Robinson, like you said, it goes to benefit the separation over the middle type of guys, I don't think Drake London has that ability. I think Kyle Pitts does in the tight end spot. It'll be interesting to see how those two guys are utilized. But at the same time, Zach Robinson's never had a guy like Drake London in his abilities, even in Los Angeles. So, and if you think about it too, Zach Robinson is partially responsible for Demarcus Robinson's career down the stretch, kind of, you know what I mean, for this Rams team. He
out well. He was
out well.
relevant for a little while there. Him and all his 5-foot self.
Yeah, all 5 foot is right. 4'9". So I don't know what they'll do with Drake London. Drake London may be the one odd man out in this system. He is coming up on the back half of his contract, I think, in 2 years. So maybe they move on from him. I don't know. Zach Robinson may find a way to utilize him extremely well. Who knows, right? I mean, we don't know.
If we think back to when they had Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, what they did a lot of time with Woods was throw shorter the screen routes to get the ball in his hands. And I think that's where Drake excels a little bit better if you could just get the ball in his hands. Plus, he's kind of go up and get the ball kind of guy. So you can scheme ways to get guys like that the ball. That's just the option. But we'll see who else they bring in. I mean, maybe Drake London. I'm just excited all around for the pieces that are already there. Just get a quarterback, though. That's the only thing.
Obviously, quarterback is going to be the big part here as well. Now, my number one guy is, pardon that little scratchy noise, I just hit my microphone. Part of my change here at number one, I moved Alex Van Pelt of New England up. Zach Robinson is my number one. I want to just make that very clear. He is my number one. I did not pick him, but my guy is Alex Van Pelt in New England. Primarily because this feels like a legitimate offensive coordinator hire in that offense. Now, that offense is still, at this point in time, dreadful looking on paper, right? Like, not a whole lot of talent, not really a lot to look forward to in that situation. Ramondre Stevenson, he's probably the the most talented piece on this offense, you would think.
Yeah, because they don't have any wide receivers.
Correct. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to probably be the only guy. Him and
Juju 4 years ago, sure.
Him and Kendrick Bourne are probably going to come back next year, in this offense, because Juju was signed to a 3-year deal, and I think Bourne is going to be going into a contract year next year. So New England will definitely be on the market for a wide receiver. I'm just very curious to see what they do with that quarterback position as well. Now, mind you, if Jaden Daniels is the pick at 3, assuming Drake May and Caleb Williams go 1-2 or 2-1 or whatever you want to, however you want to say it. If Jaden Daniels is the guy, you're talking about a mobile quarterback, a guy who can throw on the run, a guy you can scheme to get open, roll out pocket. The Patriots' offensive line is horrible, and it struggled with two statues in Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi back there. You add a little mobility, you add a couple offensive line pieces in free agency and in the draft, and the next thing you know, you have a capable offensive line. Not a great one, just a capable one with a little bit more of a mobile quarterback, and it opens this offense up, in my opinion, so much more. The other thing I like is that Gerard Mayo is a defensive guy. So again, similar to what we just were talking about, this offense is Alex Van Pelt's. Like, this is your offense. Like, you have this baby. It is not a hire that was within the system. It's not a hire that Gerard Mayo has worked with Alex Van Pelt before. It is not a hire with, years and years of experience. I think Alex Van Pelt was an offensive coordinator one other time. I think it was with Cleveland.
The last 3 years he's been there OC, but that's a situation where who knows really between him and Stefanski are calling plays. The one good thing we've gained is he was the guy who was named the head coach when Stefanski had to miss that game during the COVID year in the playoffs. So that's at least a good sign that he was entrusted to run the team.
So. And you take a look at what he's done with Cleveland. Nick Chubb, the run game has always been on point. Deshaun Watson, and we didn't really get a chance to see what Deshaun Watson could do in that offense, but look at Joe Flacco this year. You look at what he's done with Cleveland, what he's done with those pieces. If New England can just attack the two biggest needs that they need, they bring in a wide receiver of some sort, maybe somebody that can just get open, and an offensive line that can just give, if they go with a rookie quarterback like Jaden Daniels, a little bit of time, I think Daniels would be mobile enough to be able to make that move. Now, obviously, there's still some, Russell Wilson's going to be at play, Kirk Cousins is going to be at play, Justin Fields is likely going to be at play as far as what the free agency is concerned. So it doesn't have to be necessarily Jaden Daniels, but if they were to go that route, I think that is awesome, and I think it's a potential to be a really good hire for that offense. So I would keep an eye on New England, and that's why I put Alex Van Pelt in my top excitement hires for offensive coordinator, personally.
I would almost prefer New England to not take a quarterback at 3.
Yes, me too. I think they should take Fashanu.
Or fall back and gain, but I think they should come back in near the end of the first round to get that 5th-year option. Get a guy like maybe if Bo Nix was still there, or somebody who's a veteran from college, but who you're not going to start right away. It's tough in those situations because fans are always, when the team is losing, which that team is going to be losing at first, is just devoid of talent all around. But a guy who could sit at least a year, just to let that team cycle through some of this badness is going to be, and he's not getting beaten up and all that kind of stuff, and to just learn in that system when they bring in younger guys and new guys and all this kind of stuff to help them along, because it's just, I worry if they take a Jaden Daniels this year and they play him right away, and Jaden is not a polished prospect, and he struggles, how quickly are fans going to just turn on him, and they're going to move on to wanting somebody else.
This is the problem. This is the problem because I don't know if fans, and I don't know if Robert Kraft is going to put up with this regimen, throwing Mac Jones out there with his 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years, and they take Fashanu, and Fashanu struggles in his first year and is a duplicate of this year. You know what I mean? I just don't know if they can sacrifice not taking the opportunity and chance to get somebody this
I'd
year.
almost
The only other thought
prefer
process I
they
was
go get
thinking.
Flacco.
Well, that was what I was going to say. My only other thought process here was draft Daniels at 3 and sign Flacco, so you have a veteran presence in there with your. And I know that Daniels isn't even. I don't even think Daniels is necessarily the best option for New England at 3.
No.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think he is. But when you start taking a
Marvin
look at
would be a
some,
better option, actually.
well, with this
I mean,
with this offense for sure, with Alex Van Pelt, absolutely. But I mean, if this was Bill Belichick, I would say no,
no.
stay,
Yeah, right. No.
stay far away. But
Right.
I think that when I'm looking and I'm looking at the makeup of this team, like even if they took Fashiono at 3, brought in Flacco, and then traded at the end of the first, after Jaden Daniels, I think it's a fairly steep drop off. I know that
It is.
there's a couple people that have been creeping up the boards. I know JJ McCarthy has been creeping up boards lately.
Yeah.
I know Bo Nix has dropped off board, so he might be available at the end of that first. Michael Penix Jr. I mean,
I don't like
start
him for that
taking a
system,
look,
though. I
but
just
but I'm
don't
just
like
saying in general,
Penix
like
for that.
you take a look at this quarterback class after Jaden Daniels, and I don't think that you have a
gets
legitimate
murky.
guy that you feel comfortable with. You know what I mean? Like,
To
so
me, JJ's probably at 4 at this point.
me
If
too.
he get him the right a scenario like this, I actually like a team that probably is going to look to run the ball a little more and play defense. Because JJ can make a lot of good throws. I just don't think you can look at JJ and say he's going to win us games by himself. That's not JJ McCarthy.
Well, and that's the
Not
reason
any of
why,
them.
and that's the reason, yeah, really, and that's the reason why I think JJ McCarthy, though, if he was to still be around like 25 to 30,
Yeah.
maybe you could trade up to go get McCarthy and have him in that system because they're going to run the
Yes.
hell out of, they're going to run the
Ramondre.
hell out of Ramondre, right?
Yep.
But again, it's will McCarthy be available there?
Right.
Do you panic? Because after McCarthy, if McCarthy goes inside the top 15, because make no mistake about it, you still have Minnesota, you still have Denver, you
Vegas.
still have Vegas. There's a possibility that you could have Seattle surprise people.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
let's be honest, Geno's not, and they don't have a capable guy behind him.
Nope.
There's 4 teams that are going to be looking at quarterback beyond number 3, right? Beyond Jaden Daniels or beyond New England at number 3. So I say go get your guy. Don't rely on sacrificing a year because you could fill out the offensive line and wide receivers. You can find that later, especially the wide receiver class here. This wide receiver class is deep. You can find a guy to bring in for sure. And the offensive line class is like a lot of the interior guys are sliding because of how many edge rushers, how many wide receivers, like a lot of those guys are sliding because of that in this class. So I think you could still fill out those 2 positions of need without sacrificing maybe a potential franchise quarterback. And I don't know if Jaden is. I just think when you're at 3, it kind of puts you in perspective of what you may be. Now, here's the other thing, Mark, when it comes to New England. Washington at 2. If Washington is able to make a trade for Justin Fields,
Yes.
that could be the Marvin Harrison pick or the Fashiono pick. And that leaves New England in prime spot to land Caleb or Drake May as well. So I feel that New England is in a good spot at 3 if they don't want to move from 3 to still land a quarterback that can help this system and Alex Van Pelt can work with. So you draft a guy at 3, in my opinion, you bring in Flacco, and then you worry about the rest of it down the stretch. That's just what I would do in this situation. And that's why I like Alex Van Pelt in New England.
Yeah, I think he works well for at least the time being. Maybe he's not the long-term answer, but he's a guy who we've seen with Cleveland be able to develop people. Nick Chubb
Fantasy relevant guys.
Nick Chubb became one of the best running. I mean, he was always a great running back, but one of the best running backs. Amari Cooper has had a return to dominance. David Njoku this past year looked amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like Van Pelt there, in that system, because they are going to be a defensive first team with a run game. So it works perfectly. I think a perfect pairing of coaches.
Which is
Moving
essentially what Alex Van Pelt had in Cleveland this past year too. Defensive-minded team with offense. So, who's your
Moving
number 2?
on to the next one. These are not a perfect pairing of coaches, I feel like, because Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury seem like exact opposites of each other.
Yep.
But Cliff Kingsbury makes me excited because of the offensive innovation he has. He's a terrible head coach. No doubt about it. But as an offensive mind, watching him at Texas Tech, he clearly knows how to call plays. He just can't run a team.
Right.
And I don't need him to run a team. Just run the offense. And with the weapons Washington has added through a few drafts now. Now we'll see where Antonio Gibson goes. I would prefer they re-sign him and work him and Brian Robinson at least another year to see if Cliff can utilize his ability to be a pass catcher and use him all over the field in a more inventive way than, I don't even know who the OC. Oh, well, Bieniemy was this year, which I feel like Gibson finally had a pretty good year for the most part with Bieniemy because he utilized him in a better role. But you have Terry McLaurin. You have Jahan Dotson. You have, if he sticks around, Curtis Samuel, who, again, could be used in many different roles. You're going to probably have a young quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Drake May, whether it's Caleb Williams. This hire makes me believe they're going to really try to possibly get Caleb Williams, or
sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
Because Cliff utilizes quarterbacks who can move well. And honestly, between Drake May, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, they all can move around. Drake isn't as athletic as the other two, but he's perfectly athletic enough to run an offense like that. We have to remember, Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback at Texas Tech with Cliff Kingsbury. Patrick got drafted to a great situation in the NFL, which continued his development, but it was what he was able to do at Texas Tech with Cliff that got him at least the eyes on him. So give me this inventive mind in Washington to change the culture and this whole new beginning. Hopefully Dan Quinn just focuses solely on the defensive side of the team and doesn't even walk over to the offensive side of the building. Just stay with the defense. Let your offensive people do their thing, because Dan Quinn is probably my least favorite head coach hire, but Cliff is actually a good offensive hire. And I honestly wonder if Dan had say in Cliff being hired, or if it was from higher up saying, we're giving you this guy, so do better than you did in Atlanta.
Dan. Well, reportedly, it was Magic Johnson that had a huge part in bringing Cliff Kingsbury in. So, if that report is true, you would be absolutely correct as far as, them wanting to go up and bringing him in. So,
the only thing that worries me with that is that we're gonna have you here in case we fire Dan Quinn quickly, and we're gonna push you right into at least to be the interim coach. Not to say maybe he doesn't keep the job, but
normally I would say that this is a good hire in a sense, or a similar argument as we saw with the defensive-minded coach offensive coordinator situation, but it sounds less likely that Dan Quinn was part of this decision and more
Correct.
it came from the top. So it doesn't really hold the same water.
I,
You
I
know,
I really
I
wonder
don't
how
think
much Dan Quinn was the guy they really wanted, even it being Ben Johnson, I think there was other people long ahead of Dan Quinn, and for some reason, this team just ended up settling on Dan Quinn. I
well, they
feel like it
waited
was
too long.
just
They waited too long. They 1000% waited too long. They waited for Ben Johnson because they wanted to put their eggs in the basket of Ben Johnson. Think about how many teams had Ben Johnson on the top of their list, but still went out and decided to hire somebody.
I don't know why you don't just hire Aaron Glenn then from Detroit instead. This felt like a scenario to hire a young upcoming coach, which you could have grabbed from so many different places.
Yeah, for
At
sure.
least because
Absolutely.
it just this for that team, this just feels like the old way of doing things again.
Yeah.
So again, it feels just a rushed. We needed to pick somebody. Let's go with this guy because he's got the name.
It's funny you said rush because they were the last team to hire a head coach.
But when
But
they
it's still
finally made the decision, it just
right.
felt like we're going to meet these guys. Oh, Dan Quinn's the hire.
Yeah. Because it was
Like,
because they A waited too long and
yeah,
B they didn't fill out their coaching candidacies enough to diversify because they waited so much for so long for Ben Johnson. And Cliff Kingsbury, I'm on the fence with. I feel like that you are a little more excited than I am, and I'm the Commanders fan in this situation, primarily
you never
because,
decided anything to do.
well, but we don't know what we're getting with Cliff, even as the offensive coordinator, right? Because prior to him being a head coach in Arizona, he didn't have an offensive coordinator position in the NFL. He was a head coach in college. So
He was
there,
only coaching college. He wasn't even
right,
OC before that, and got a head coaching job in college. He just was OC in college.
correct. So that's my biggest issue. That's kind of where I'm at with, um, you know, when it comes to Cliff Kingsbury and what he does for Washington. What does he truly do? Do they ride with Sam Howell, who proved in some candidacies last year that he's a capable quarterback, which is less likely, by the way. He's
I would
connected
put
to
it at
Caleb.
0%.
He's connected to Caleb Williams, which I'm less excited about that. And
Mhm.
at the possibility of them trading up one spot and giving up, a candy's, ransom, King's ransom for bullshit, and move up one spot to get Caleb Williams, and then his head's not there, and this team, this franchise, is even a worse spot than they were with RG3. Like I just I think I love the idea of him being here's the offense, I'll leave you alone from a Dan Quinn perspective. But I do not like the idea of Cliff Kingsbury coming in without being tested in some other capacity. Um, and I feel like Dan Quinn will take this offense over if it struggles.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I feel like. I just
I chose it mainly because there are so many ways it could go,
right.
but it's got the highest ceiling of most of the hires. It just also has the lowest floor.
I
But
can
give
see
me
that.
that upside. Give me that upside because we could be looking at Texas Tech in the NFL. They'll lose games. You're not going to win anything, but give me that offensive production.
Well, in fantasy world, that's what you're talking about, anyways.
Exactly.
The one thing that I would like to see with this team is if they move away from Caleb, bring in Fields and draft Marvin Harrison. That would be more ideal to me, and it would be more ideal to me on an offensive side of things, because I know that Cliff and Caleb have this working relationship. But how many times have we seen a working relationship like that actually work at the NFL level? Right? Like, it very rarely does.
It barely worked for Andrew Luck.
Right.
He was great.
Right. So it does not, just because it doesn't mean it's going to mesh, right? And you're also talking about Cliff Kingsbury, who pounded the table for Kyler Murray. And again, no offense to Kyler Murray, because I think but you heard it in the intro, like it's a quarterback that is very, very questionable as a quarterback. in this league, and he pounded the table for him. And as a former quarterback, I feel like you should be better at evaluating quarterbacks. You know,
I agree, but then in that scenario, are we pounding the table for him because we have the number 1 pick and everybody pretty much told us we're taking that guy, so I have to pound the table for him?
no, because you have
Who
to
knows?
remember Cliff Kingsbury got the job in the position because of what he said in August of the year before the draft. When he was
Yeah, I
still a
mean, but
coach, a coach at Texas Tech, they asked him
you
who
have
he
to
would pick at number
remember,
1. He said Kyler Murray, no doubt. If I had the first pick, I'm taking Kyler Murray no matter what.
because what other quarterback went in that draft?
Well, yeah, but I mean, but even if that's the case, though, it's still the fact that you pounded the table for a guy.
You got
That
yourself an NFL coaching job and made a ton of money. I
well,
mean,
right, but it doesn't tell me that means he evaluates quarterbacks really good, though. You know what I
right,
mean?
but we
Like,
don't, and that's the thing. We don't know that because he doesn't have the experience. So
the only
that
experience
will,
he has is Kyler Murray. That's all I can go based off of, though.
yeah,
You
right.
know what I mean? Like,
But I mean
and
that
to me,
again, that was a predetermined pick even before he was the head coach there. Yeah,
I
I
don't think
mean,
it was.
if
I don't think it was.
I think it was. I think it was. I don't think there was any because
I don't.
they took McCown at 9, or not McCown, Rosen at 9 the year prior, and just destroyed him with that head coach they fired within a year.
Yep.
I think I honestly don't know what they were thinking in those years
But I'm
of
not.
decision
But I'm
making.
not even sure that they would have kept Rosen. I just don't think that
No,
Murray was the clear cut number 1 that year.
I
I just
can't
don't
think
think
of
it
who else
was.
was even in his draft class.
I think they went out and got Kingsbury because of that clip, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do this. And
Yeah, once they got the number
once
1
he
pick,
got
yeah.
hired as the coach, they were like, this is going to be what we're going to do. You wanted him at number 1. You have the opportunity to get him at number 1. Let's see what happens. And well,
Yeah, I mean, Cliff had the mindset of I'm gonna bring Texas Tech style to the NFL, and I think he learned quickly that's not gonna work as an overall style. You have to, but I also don't think he was great at running an entire team because I think I said
that's
before
yeah.
he I think tried to lean too much on let me go get defensive guys because I don't know that side of the ball very well.
Mm.
So, I mean, who knows? But I think for fantasy purposes, he could be amazing and it could be terrible. But
Well, Kyler
it
had some good
could be amazing.
years. Kyler had some good years, fantasy years underneath
Kyler
Kingsbury.
isn't a terrible quarterback, as you even say in the intro. He's just bad at decision
I didn't
making.
say he was terrible in the intro.
No, I'm saying you say
Oh, right.
he's
Okay.
not a terrible quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
He's bad at decision making and he has terrible size.
Yeah.
He's not. Everybody wants to put him as Russell Wilson because they're similar in height. Russell Wilson is probably 30 pounds heavier than Kyler Murray is. And yes,
Without
Russell
losing
does
that
not
speed.
run. Right. Well, he doesn't run as well as Kyler does.
No.
But he has the idea of I don't want to run. I want to throw the ball and I run when I have to. Kyler, for the longest time, is I'm going to just run around and figure it out. He played backyard football too much.
Yeah. And so what it does do for Washington, in my opinion, if this offense is going to be capable and Cliff Kingsbury is I think it's good news for whoever the quarterback may be. If it clicks, because again, we don't have the offensive side of things for Cliff Kingsbury. He's never been an offensive coordinator before. Was a head coach. So this gives him a chance to kind of step back and now learn a little bit of the NFL. And Dan Quinn had some success in Atlanta. Like, make no mistakes about it. He had some success in Atlanta.
Took him to the Super
It was
Bowl.
the last couple of years were kind of shoddy, but he got to a Super Bowl, and he did with Matt Ryan. So there's some success there, at least with Dan Quinn. It's just, will they click? Because this feels less of a Dan Quinn hire and more of a front office hire. And is that going to be the right blend of what you need? If it is, Washington needs offensive line help miserably, but they have the largest cap space. This team has the most chance to flip this around faster than any of the other teams that we're talking about that has any replacements.
Don't they have like 9 picks in like the first 100 picks in the draft or something like that?
They have 9 picks inside the first, like, 3 rounds, I believe.
Yeah, I think in the top 100 picks, I think they have like 9 of them.
Something like that. So, I mean, they're loaded at ammo. I'm afraid they're gonna use that to trade up one spot, though. That's what I'm afraid of the most. I certainly hope they don't fucking do that, but that's what I'm afraid of the most. So, but whatever. I mean, if the Justin Fields rumors are true, I love Justin Fields in Washington or Cliff Kingsbury. I think that he brings. I actually think he brings Kyler Murray-esque style of play, and I actually think he might be a little bit better of a thrower than Kyler Murray. A little bit. I'm not going to say a lot, but I'm going to say a little bit. I
They're
think,
they're not far off in arm talent. I think it's just better decision making for
and I think they
Justin.
both. I think they both still struggle with decision making, though. So, I mean,
Sure, yes, but I think Justin's is better. So
yeah.
I think Justin just needs better coaching. I mean,
And
I'm not even saying Eberflus is bad. It's he had Nagy doing whatever Matt Nagy was doing.
and then he had the guy that just got hired over in Las Vegas, Ketsy,
Yeah,
last year.
but
So,
which what I mean. But that wasn't last year. Wasn't terrible. He was
yeah, it
injured for
wasn't.
part of it, but
Yeah.
that offense actually played well. Finally, because Matt Nagy was gone.
So, my second pick, moving off from Cliff Kingsbury, because I'm a Washington Commanders fan and I don't even suffer from anxiety, and I get anxiety about it. Uh, is a pick that's kind of a wild card. And I think that I'm a little more excited to see it because they did hire an offensive head coach as well. And I feel like the offense may not necessarily be his right away, but I feel like he fits a lot of what Brian Callahan in Tennessee wants to do, and that's Nick Foles, the new offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Now, I will say his track record last year is not the greatest. He was the quarterback's coach in Jacksonville, but I don't know how much power he had in that offense with that system, right? Like, I don't know how much overall power he had or decision making he had or anything along those lines. There's not much prior to him other than that. He's some college stuff and whatnot. So what intrigues me about this hire is he's fairly young. He turns 40 this year. He's a guy who's getting an opportunity, and like similar to you with Cliff Kingsbury in Washington, he's walking into a situation in Tennessee where he has an offensive-minded coach, so he can kind of take the pressure off of himself, right? Like, Callahan's going to be like, okay, we're going to do this together. He gets to work with the players that he wants. They have a quarterback situation in Will Levis that appears to be the guy he's going to be there. Sounds like he's going to be the guy that's going to be there. And they have a young wide receiving core. And I feel like the Nick Foles being there and coming off his experience in Jacksonville may open this offense up, which is great news for Tajay Spears, which is great news for Treylon Burks that the dude can stay healthy, which is great news for Chiki Okonkwo. Like, it's great news for a fairly young offense. If you really think of the Tennessee Titans, that offense is fairly young. It's the defense that's really aging. The offense overall is pretty young. A lot of people think of Derrick Henry and they're like, or Ryan Tannehill, but like overall with what the direction they're moving in, it's a pretty young offense.
They're the leftovers from the previous offense.
Right. So it's a hire that came off Callahan. Callahan is the one that made the hire. So it goes to show me there's some trust there. Like I wanted to bring him in. I have a head coaching job now, but I think I can instill this system with this guy. And he can take that system, which we saw in Cincinnati, and add his own twist to it and bring some other things in. Now, T. Higgins is a wild card because T. Higgins flat out said today in an interview, where do you want to play next year? And he said, if it's not with Cincinnati, Tennessee would be a good spot. So Tennessee, Callahan, offense, Callahan, already there. And you put him with Treylon Burks, so Treylon Burks can stay healthy. I think that this franchise is moving in the right direction. I think that this is more of the Cliff Kingsbury trajectory that you put, where I think Holes has got probably the lowest floor, but may have the highest potential. It will just be interesting to see.
So he was the passing game coordinator for
Right.
Jacksonville, and that was one of their bright spots. Even though Trevor Lawrence had a
Trevor
bit
Lawrence
of
was
a
hurt,
down year, right?
Yeah.
But that passing game actually did well for a lot of the time because there were times when Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, all were looking like top guys, and ETN had one of his best seasons, and I believe he still had a lot of yards on the ground, but he was catching passes. So there is a lot to like, and he previously was working in the NFL with the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders for a time, different positions throughout their offensive system, but that was with multiple coaches, I want to say, because they changed coaches quite a few times over the years. So he was kept around by different people doing something right.
Yeah.
You know, he then went to be the UNLV offensive coordinator for 1 year, so didn't have to go far. Vegas, stayed in Vegas.
Right there.
And then Jacksonville brought him in to be the passing game coordinator. So there's something to like there at least for them.
He comes from that same mind frame, the young style, new style coach. I mean, Sean McVay is only 3 years younger than him. I know that Sean McVay had a head coaching job a lot sooner, but it's that fresh outlook, that fresh take at that offense position. And you think about Brian Callahan, I mean, Brian Callahan's very close. You know what I mean? Like it's very close to the same thing. Innovative offense.
Well, yeah, because Zach Taylor comes from McVay, doesn't he?
And Zach Taylor comes from McVay. Yeah.
So Zach Taylor being the head coach in Cincinnati, Callahan being his OC for I think for all 4 years. Taylor's been there. I think.
Yeah, I think he was
all 4. So it's the same lineage. But I also didn't Jacksonville fire their OC at one point or at the end of the season?
No, Press Taylor's still their offensive coordinator.
They kept him. I thought they fired him, but
no, they wanted to fire. People wanted to fire him. People wanted him fired, but he's still there. Press Taylor's staying. He's going to be back in 2024. The other thing
there's a lot to like here.
Well, the other thing that I like about this too is Brian Callahan comes from Cincinnati, and Holes is not coming with him. This was a handpicked thing, so obviously Callahan saw something with Holes and likes him. So for me, if I'm looking at Tennessee players, obviously offseason and draft have a lot to do with this, but for me, this lights up about Tajay Spears.
Yeah.
Seeing what ETN did in that passing game last year, and knowing that Tajay Spears can catch the ball out of the backfield of Tennessee, we're not going to see Tajay Spears run the ball 35 times like Derrick Henry. Like, we don't have to see that. You know what I mean? Like,
ETN isn't a guy built to run up the middle every time. Right. Tajay Spears isn't a guy built to run up the middle. It's a very similar zone type of running back. So they fit very similar to each other in style. So it's a great outlook for him. He looked good this past season in Tennessee with the touches he got because he was the change of pace guy and he was able to get in open field and do things. So it's a team that is very interesting because it could be Will Levis. It most likely will be Will Levis.
Yeah.
But it's a team that could draft a quarterback also.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it would be more likely a second day style quarterback again.
Possibly. But you never know.
But I just don't know with 3 years in a row, and Levis was picked by the GM that's there now. Yeah. So I almost wonder if the requisite for Callahan coming there was, can you work with Will Levis? You know what I mean? Like,
it's a possibility. I'm just saying right now it's not out of the realm that they're not a team that if a Jaden Daniels starts to slide, let's say he doesn't go at 3 and he's sitting there around 7, 8. Yeah. Because I think Tennessee's in the middle of the draft, I believe.
I think if Jaden Daniels slides past 3 and out of the top 5, I think Minnesota, Denver, Las Vegas, and Seattle even possibly could be the 4 teams that would most likely to be the most aggressive into that number 6 hole.
Sure, maybe. Oh no, they pick at 7 actually. I didn't
Oh,
realize
the
Tennessee
Tennessee
had
picks
that
7?
high.
Oh.
They pick at 7. So that if he's sliding, I wouldn't put it past them to make a consideration or be the team to get out because he's sliding and let somebody come up there and jump and get him and
Yeah.
gain because they need offensive line help probably just as much as probably Washington does. That
Yeah.
team is that we saw this year. Derrick Henry, yeah, sure, he's getting up in age, but that offensive line did him no help whatsoever.
No.
So,
And the other thing is too is what I like about this hire as well for Will Levis, if he's the guy, which I suspect he will be, is they brought in a coach that worked with Trevor Lawrence. So you have a coach that has experience with one of the better young minds in football as well. So you can
you bring in a coach
right.
who worked with Trevor Lawrence. You
Yep.
bring in the head coach who worked with
With
Joe
Joe
Burrow
Burrow.
and made Browning
Yep.
look like an NFL starter.
And Browning is actually probably a guy that will go with him to Tennessee.
Possibly,
If Zach Taylor doesn't, go into that front office and say lock this guy up. But Browning is very possibly a guy that could end up going into Tennessee as well. So, but yeah, I mean, you have 2 coaches that work with 2, quarterbacks that are considered 2 of the youngest 2 of the young bright stars of the future of the NFL. It gives him a different experience and different perspective, than a coaching staff. And no offense to Ryan Tannehill, but let's face it. I mean, he's not a bright young future guy on their level. So he doesn't have Levis will have a different perspective now of working with coaches. Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville should have been. I mean, he got hurt this past year, but they should have been in the playoffs 2 years in a row. So, it's winning and being successful is something that both those guys know. Whereas Tannehill kind of middled. Was like kind of a middling experience in Tennessee for years. They won some games, but they were 7-20. They were 7-22 in the last 29 games of Mike Vrabel's coaching in the NFL. So
he kept them
as head coach,
afloat for a little bit, and that was it.
Yeah,
that's all he could do.
So this is good for Will Levis for me. So Tajay Spears and Will Levis are the 2 bright spots I think in Tennessee. Treylon Burks, if he can stay healthy, that's not a coaching thing. That's just a health thing for him. And if they get T. Higgins, then I think T. Higgins is, to the moon.
Yeah,
personally,
for sure.
I think T. Higgins is to the moon. So
him and Burks are so different; it works perfectly.
Yep, for sure. So, all right, now the dark side of this, the not so great hires, the ones that we are not happy about, I guess. It's the best way to put this. We picked 1 each, and I stayed away from the guy that Mark picked because this is what I figured Mark was going to pick. Mark, who is it? I don't think this should be a surprise. I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody, to be honest with you. I don't think it should be a surprise at all.
It's Greg Roman in Los Angeles for the Chargers. And my biggest thing with Greg Roman is he doesn't seem able to evolve his style of coaching to this new NFL. And that's one thing I'll say about Harbaugh is he's stuck in his ways a bit, but he still evolves it to what he needs it to evolve to. He had Colin Kaepernick running the pistol style. He had JJ McCarthy running these different styles of offense that worked well for what he had. So that's exciting. But Greg Roman is literally still riding the coattails of being the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh back in San Francisco. If it wasn't for that time, I don't think we'd ever have seen Greg Roman. And it's the only reason he has a job now. He did nothing to help Lamar Jackson other than he was able to have a running game that made Lamar Jackson run around like a nut job. Take their playoff game out, Lamar Jackson looked like a very capable quarterback this past season. So clearly Greg Roman was the problem. And sure, Lamar won a MVP with Greg Roman. That's because Lamar ran around like a nut job with the ball and just made these amazing plays just off the top of his head. And Greg Roman did nothing for him. It it just felt like Harbaugh waited because they didn't hire an OC for a very long time after Harbaugh was
Correct.
picked. And I felt like he just chose, even with his defensive coordinator, brought him from Michigan. At least the defensive coordinator is a young coordinator that is going to get a try in the NFL. I feel like he picked Greg Roman because he knows him. He knows Greg Roman will probably do whatever Jim Harbaugh wants him to do. He'll be a yes man. He will not try to change whatever Jim Harbaugh says. That's what Greg Roman's going to do. And I have zero faith in Greg Roman. And if this offense does not play well, he's going to be fired after the first year. I think he will be. Maybe the run game looks better, but that may not make me excited for Herbert and whatever wide receivers they decide to put on the outside, because you're going to have 15 passes all game and 45 rushes with these two at the helm.
I agree. I am not. I know when Jim Harbaugh was hired, there was a lot of people that were like, Justin Herbert to the moon, and they were all excited for Justin Herbert. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, why? And then Greg Roman came on board, and I'm even further like, why? They don't have a running back. Chances are they'll probably be in the running for Blake Corum in the second round because they will definitely be in the running for Blake Corum. So I guess it's great news for Blake Corum fans. Congratulations.
If he can do it in the NFL.
Exactly. I'm not a fan of this for Herbert. I feel like this is a gross. I don't think Greg Roman is going to take Herbert and mold his offense around Herbert. This is something that we've seen too many times with offensive coordinators where they try to take pieces that don't fit their system and try to make it fit their system. I love Justin Herbert. He is one of, by far, my favorite overall quarterbacks in the league. I never thought I'd say that about an Oregon quarterback, but here I am in 2024 saying Herbert is fantastic and I love him. It's really sad to watch what's going to happen with his career at this point, and you might as well forget about their wide receivers. The year Keenan Allen just had, forget about it. The year Quentin Johnson had, well, that's already forgettable, but Quentin Johnson is going to be even more forgettable. It just, for being a former quarterback, again, this goes back to being a former quarterback. For being a former quarterback, Jim Harbaugh has done such a poor job of really building quarterbacks. Even at the NFL level, like JJ McCarthy is showing what he has, but I honestly feel like that's in spite of Jim Harbaugh, not because of Jim Harbaugh. You know what I mean? Like, and you can't run the ball with Justin Herbert as much as you did with Lamar Jackson. Like, Herbert's mobile, sure, but he's not Lamar Jackson. Very few are, if anybody. You worked with Colin Kaepernick. You worked with Lamar Jackson. Both systems were basically the exact same thing. So
Lamar's just a better quarterback overall.
Yeah, Lamar's just a better quarterback overall. So now you have Justin Herbert. So unless Roman plans on wisening up, which I do not think he's going to, and molding his offense around Justin Herbert, this does not look like a good marriage at all. And I would be surprised if it wasn't annulled in 72 hours. Or at least it should have been annulled in 72 hours already. Because it's not pretty. Do you have anything else to add to this, or no? Okay, go ahead.
Well, everybody wants to bring up that Harbaugh coached Andrew Luck in college. And yes, he did.
Yeah.
And to think that Jim Harbaugh turned Andrew Luck into what Andrew Luck was is just crazy because Andrew Luck took terrible coaching everywhere he went,
Yeah.
including the NFL, and made them look good. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. Well,
Andrew Luck made Jim Harbaugh look good,
that's
not
like
Jim
saying
Harbaugh.
that's like saying Cliff Kingsbury made Patrick Mahomes who he is.
Now, Jim Harbaugh finds ways to make teams win. He does that.
College
But
teams.
well, he did it in the NFL. His NFL teams were
Okay.
winners.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
San
fair.
Francisco's the only one. It was a winner,
Yeah.
but he's never coached a quarterback like this. And
No.
that was going to be Eli's point tonight was everybody is so excited for Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, but he's never had a quarterback like this. Andrew Luck was amazing.
Yeah.
He's a better decision maker than Justin Herbert is. But he's not as good of an arm talent as Justin Herbert has.
Nope.
He's not making throws like Justin Herbert makes. Herbert needs now. I will give credit to Jim Harbaugh. He can make better decisions than Staley. So,
Mark, you and
hopefully
I
that
make
takes
better decisions, Brandon Staley, and we've
but
never been a
hopefully
head coach
that
in the
takes
NFL.
pressure off of Herbert to just go out there and sling the rock and play quarterback and not have to be the coach for the damn team.
Yeah, it just
Greg Roman will not be the offensive coordinator come next year. I'm saying it now.
I completely agree with you. I don't think so either. And another offensive coordinator that won't be there next year, or won't be with their team next year, is Kellen Moore in Philadelphia. I'm sorry. Look, it's nothing on Kellen Moore. I liked the idea of Kellen Moore in LA. Right? I liked that idea. It did not work out.
No.
Now, chalk it up to whatever you want to chalk it up to. I blame Brandon Staley more than anything, just because it's Brandon Staley, and I hated Brandon Staley for the last 3 years. Right? Like, I just wanted him to go because of how bad that team was for no reason. Like, you think about that team and how much talent was on that team. There's no reason that team shouldn't have won, what was it, 5 games this year, 4 games? Like, they're picking, what, 4th overall? 5th overall?
Yeah. 6th. I think they're 6th.
A lot
No.
of people, I think it's 5th, and I think a lot of people think Brock Bowers is likely going to be the pick there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
5.
they're somewhere right there. Something like
Yeah,
that.
anyways, beside the point of all that hoopla. Kellen Moore goes to a situation in Philadelphia where they lost their offensive coordinator Shane Steichen the year before.
Yep.
Brian Johnson stepped up in-house to take over
Yep.
the offensive coordinator position. I think Brian Johnson actually was a scapegoat.
Yep.
I think this was a Nick Sirianni issue.
Yep.
I think Kellen Moore coming there still makes it a Nick Sirianni issue. I do not think that this is a situation where Kellen Moore is going to come in and rectify anything that happened. And it's coming into a situation with an offense that is aging out. There's some questions on the offensive line with Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey. Are they coming back? Jalen Hurts took a huge regressive step this year. If it wasn't for the tush push in fantasy football purposes, we discussed this in one of the other chats, one of the other leagues that we're in. If it wasn't for the tush push, you lose, what was it, like 50, 60 points?
Something like that, yeah. And
So-
I mean, that's not even including all of the downs down the field that you end up picking a first down up on.
If you have a first
would've-
down point.
This is just literally just getting you into the end zone.
Right.
So
I think
it
it
include all
ended
that.
up being 84 points. I think it was off of like tush pushes or something like that. From a fantasy perspective, sure, tush push is great, whatever, blah blah blah. But
First Hurts touchdown, that's which is great for your fantasy.
but it's not great for everything else though. And you bring in a different offensive coordinator. But most importantly, this is his 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years. Now, 4th.
Yeah, because he had Doug Peterson with whoever the OC was
Because
before that.
Steichen was for 1 year, Brian Johnson was for 1 year, Kellen Moore's coming in, so that's 3 in the last 3. So whoever was before
Whoever
Steichen,
Doug Peterson had as OC, I don't remember who it was.
yeah. So before Steichen, so that's 4 out of 4 years now. He's going to have a different offensive coordinator. So and it's not just Jalen Hurts; that offense as a whole is going to have a different offensive coordinator. AJ Brown's fine just because he's AJ Brown. I mean, the dude is a talent. Let's be honest. Like,
Is he
I
still
don't
there?
looking at what Kellen, well, that's true too. But looking at what Kellen Moore did with Keenan Allen, I don't think AJ Brown's going to be a problem.
No.
I think Devontae Smith may be questioned. What are we going to do with him? Because that wide receiver two in that Charger system did not really work out very well. Now, granted, Mike Williams was hurt.
He
Palmer
played
was
well
hurt.
before that.
Palmer was hurt. They both had decent games, but
I don't. I
I just
Kellen
think
Moore is capable,
I don't
but
like it. I don't think it's a
it's
good marriage.
now but it's now two different coaches. Now, yes, Mike McCarthy is also a terrible coach. Let's not and
Yes.
Brandon Staley was a terrible coach, but Kellen Moore had one really good year in Dallas, and for whatever reason since then, it's not been good. Even with his last year in Dallas, that offense looked
Yeah.
so much worse than it did this past season.
Yeah.
The offense in LA looked better before Kellen Moore came to that offense this past season.
Look, Austin Eckler was completely obsolete.
Just forgot about.
And Philadelphia already said that DeAndre Swift is unlikely to come back. So who can you make obsolete there when there's nobody else there that's make obsolete? Like,
I mean, I don't
Kenneth
know why you're not
Gainwell?
bringing Swift back, but yes, that's
That-
Boston Scott. You're making
that-
Boston Scott
Oh,
irrelevant.
yeah, well, he already is. So congratulations.
But we also look at Kellen Moore has never coached or had a quarterback like Jalen Hurts. He had Dak Prescott, who, yes, Dak can move, but he is not a mobile quarterback.
I think Dak's closer to Justin Herbert than either of those guys are to Jalen Hurts.
100%.
So
Both can move, but they are not mobile quarterbacks. Hurts makes defenses have to respect his legs, which is
Yeah.
what makes his ability to throw a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't know if are you going to build an offense where you're going to make him stand back there like a statue and throw the ball, because it's not going to work. It's not Jalen Hurts. He is
Not at all.
not that guy. He gets propped up because for how much I don't like Devontae Smith's size, he's a good wide receiver who clearly can get open, which I mean, if you can get open, you can catch the ball, and he stayed healthy. So the one knock that I had on the guy was I didn't think he'd ever stay healthy.
Me too.
So you have these two wide receivers that's what makes Jalen Hurts look so much better than he really is. Kellen
Correct.
Moore is the Cliff Kingsbury hire. I don't think Sirianni hired him. I don't think Sirianni wanted him. I think Howie brought him in.
Okay.
Because if we get the same stuff that we got, because when it went bad, the rumors came out of it's because nobody knew on offense who was calling the play. So if that happens again, or this offense struggles, I don't think Kellen Moore is going to be the scapegoat, and it's going to be Sirianni. Because boy, did it sour fast. Because they loved that guy the year prior, and they loved him for the first 11 games. And then all of a sudden, something changed. And now there's rumors A.J. Brown wants out. There's this, that, and the other thing. So clearly,
you know what this kind of reminds me of, and I'm not sure it's the same situation. And Sam is the Eagles fan out of the Shady Sports Network. He's the one that's the Eagles fan.
Kelly time.
It reminds me of the Carson Wentz last year. Like how everything just kind of fell apart, and then you heard it was inner turmoil. You heard it was coming from the GM. You heard it was coming from ownership,
Doug didn't
the
want
coaching.
Hurts was forced onto him.
Yeah, and then it felt like Wentz's the way that he was treated and everything that was going on with him, attitude, stuff like that. Like what was brought together, and Wentz was forced out. Now it's starting to feel like that maybe the same thing's kind of happening with Jalen Hurts. Shout out to the Back It Up Binge podcast. Thank you for joining in and dropping by and saying hi as well. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button for the Shady Sports Network as well. But it really is one of those situations where it almost feels like that there's some kind of turmoil happening here, and it's coming from Nick Sirianni in this situation, or maybe it's coming from Howie Roseman again, or whatever else. Something happened and it fell off the rails very fast, because let me tell you something. The AJ Brown Jalen Hurts connection after that first loss where San Francisco decimated this team.
Oh.
What happened? Where did it go? Where did it go?
It's clearly something to do with Philly. Because if we look back, Andy Reid was beloved, and then because we couldn't win a Super Bowl, we hate this guy. Chip Kelly comes in, look at this offense, look how great it is, and then it didn't work after that. Now we hate this guy.
Yeah.
Doug Peterson wins you a freaking Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, yeah. With a backup quarterback.
We want to claim Frank Reich was the guy that really won us a Super Bowl. Well, guess what? He hasn't done crap anywhere else. So I can't really say it was all Frank Reich, because he couldn't do anything in Indianapolis and he couldn't do anything in Carolina.
Right.
So clearly Doug Peterson, who has had success in Jacksonville now, was doing something right. But he couldn't get along with people. Yeah. Now we bring Sirianni in. We get to a Super Bowl. It's the greatest thing. We got this coach. He loves the city. He's one of us. Nope, now he sucks. Get him out of here. So something, whether it's owner, GM, fans, all just y'all need to just ride out the good and bad times and work through it.
So I said Nick Sirianni needs to stay in Philadelphia. And I had an Eagles fan tell me that I was nuts and I'm wrong and I need to stick to my own team. So I let the argument die. Sure, whatever. Like, whatever you want to say. Look, I do not like the Eagles. So keep making these mistakes. I'm perfectly fine with it. As a Commanders fan, keep doing it. You're just I'm okay with it. What I will say is if AJ Brown leaves this team, I don't care about the Kellen Moore hiring. This team is garbage to me. I'm writing off almost anybody except for maybe Devontae Smith, but I'm taking him as my wide receiver 4.
He's not a 1. He's not an alpha.
Yeah.
You saw it in the playoff game because AJ Brown didn't play in that playoff game. Yes, Smith had a lot of catches and did his thing, but teams will just load up on him.
Yeah.
And nobody else in that offense can do anything.
So I'm not taking any chance with any Philadelphia player in this situation. Okay. Well, let's get ready to wrap this up. I want to do something a little bit different. We did not discuss this, Mark. I'm going to throw a curveball at you here. I know you're prepared. All right. Your first guy was Zach Robinson for Atlanta. Give me one guy off of this offense as the roster sits right now that you don't want that isn't the quarterback situation with Zach Robinson.
It's going to be Drake London because Pitts has been so bad. It can only get better, I feel like.
I feel like we've been saying that for 3 years now.
Sure. But Arthur Smith. Bijan is just too talented to not and he was overcoming Arthur Smith, not playing his damn self. So
right.
I'm not worried about Bijan. Maybe Tyler Algier. I'm not a big fan of now because he doesn't have Arthur Smith throwing him out there ahead of Bijan. But I'm not sure who their wide receiver 2 even is because they never used him. I believe there was a game when literally no other wide receiver had a catch for Atlanta at one point. So I have no idea who their wide receiver 2 is. So it's at this point it has to be Drake London because, like you said, he doesn't perfectly fit the ideology we saw in LA with the Rams. Again, I think you scheme for your players, not you force your players to be in your scheme. So I'm hoping Zach Robinson is that kind of offensive coordinator, that he's going to build around what's already there.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see what they put around those three guys, because again, they need a wide receiver 2 on that team in general. Again, I have not the slightest clue who would have even caught passes after Drake London.
I think Mac Hollins was their number 2.
Was he this year? Because I didn't even think he did anything this year.
I think. Well, no, I know. I think he just landed as their number 2. I don't think that they had a true number 2. I think it was just he was the one that ended up being their number 2.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith and Mac Hollins were your pass catchers behind Pitts, London, and Bijan. Do you want to know how many receptions Mac Hollins had?
64.
18. 18 in 17 games. He had 18 receptions.
I was just taking a shot in the dark. Apparently, I was way off.
I mean, London only had 69, and he was their top pass catcher. 53 for Pitts. Jonnu had 50. 58 for Bijan. The next player is 18. It goes 18, 14, 18, 11, 9, 12, 9, and then just a bunch of nothing. So there is nothing else on that team. So you want to know who the rest of the team, because they all are trash, and somebody else will take their spot.
All right, yeah, that's fair. Drake London was my guy as well. I already said it though when we
because there's nothing else. Jonnu Smith, maybe that's my choice. Jonnu Smith is not going to see the targets he saw this past year.
Don't give me that. Give me a relevant guy.
He ain't getting he had 50 receptions on that team,
and he also had a 1-yard jet sweep that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
when you have Bijan Robinson,
that felt really relevant to how New Orleans used to treat Mark Ingram. It's the 1-yard line. Jet sweep the tight end. I can't think of the tight end's name at the time. The young guy that.
If I can't tell you how bad the NFC South was, this Atlanta team almost made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury in Washington, not a quarterback in this situation, just because we don't know what's going to happen.
In that scenario, I'm gonna say it's Brian Robinson. Because he doesn't fit the mold of a high tempo offensive running back. He's the let's slow it down. We're going to huddle up. And I think with Cliff, we're going to see a more high tempo. Maybe not the entire game. Brian Robinson will still get his carries, but there are going to be crucial parts of games that you do not see Brian Robinson on the field, depending on who they bring in. Obviously, if he's the only guy, then he's the only guy. But I solely believe there will be another running back that will see the field in the crucial downs for that team.
What I will say is that I think that the Cliff Kingsbury hiring is better for Antonio Gibson than it is Brian Robinson if Gibson comes back.
Yep.
Gibson's a free agent, so we'll see what happens, but I think it suits him better for what he does. I think he's a better version of Chase Edmonds, and Chase Edmonds actually had all right seasons underneath Cliff in Arizona.
Seasons, yes.
So I think that benefits Gibson a lot more than it does Brian Robinson. I agree with you. Brian Robinson was going to be my choice. Terry McLaurin's a very close second, though, because I think that this is going to start molding into a Jahan Dotson offense. I think you're going to start seeing less. And that McLaurin's going to be almost 30. I mean, we're talking he's getting up there in age. Eventually, the young blood is going to have to take over as the primary guy. So I think that might be the changing of the guard, where Kingsbury now moves Dotson as the number 1 and starts with McLaurin going back. So close second for McLaurin, in my opinion there. Alex Van Pelt in New England, that was my guy. That roster's kind of garbage. We don't need to pick anything. It helps from Ramondre Stevenson. We know that.
I'll pick one that it helps. Hunter Henry, I believe he's still going to be there. Hunter Henry, I think, has a better season than we've seen in New England the previous years.
Well, okay, we'll do the one that
we'll
helps
see
then.
more closer to Hunter Henry that we had in Tennessee than we will. Hunter was a Charger.
No, Hunter Charger. He was a Charger.
So when he was with the Chargers, that contract we'll see it this year.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I was gonna say if there's one that you didn't want to see, I would say Juju, but does that really count? So
There's no other. No. There's nobody who was bad or good. There was nobody good last year. So no.
yeah, doesn't yeah. And then
Can't
Nick
get worse.
Holes for Tennessee, my other guy. One guy that you don't want with him coming there.
Again, I feel like the guys you're gonna choose, I don't even know if they're gonna be there. Because I don't believe DeAndre is still under contract. Was he 1 year deal guy? I
DeAndre,
believe.
I believe DeAndre is under contract. I think it was a 2-year deal.
And then it's Hopkins, because I think you're going to see an influx of young talent and utilizing the young talent in that offense. So if DeAndre is back with that team, it's DeAndre. I mean, other than that, the Westbrook, Akine, the Kyle Phillips, the whatever wide receiver that seemed to always pop every other game for that team, I don't think we see that much anymore.
Yeah, especially if T. Higgins gets down there as well too. I mean, that's going to be a nightmare in that situation for sure. Yeah, I would probably say Hopkins, because again, I think you're going to start seeing an influx. I would say Burke, but I feel like that if Burke, like I said, can stay healthy, I feel like that's going to be huge for Callahan and Holes to get him involved and whatnot. Okay, Greg Roman, a player that you would pick in that Chargers offense.
Isaiah Spiller.
And you only have to go with him. You only have to go with him because he's on roster right now.
I would say if he's given the opportunity to be the lead back, even if they bring in someone in the draft. Now, if it's Blake Corum, that's going to make it tough because they're actually more similar than they are different.
Right.
If they bring in more of the pass catching style running back, that's good for Isaiah Spiller. But if they give Spiller a chance, I think he could do well in that style of offense with Herbert being the quarterback.
Yeah. I'm going to say that even if they draft Brock Bowers, I'm going to say Gerald Everett. Greg Roman has been known to run 2 tight ends out there. He's succeeded with it. He's done really well with it. I think Everett fits. I think Everett and Bowers would fit that Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely-esque type roles there. Or who was it? It was Mark Andrews, and who was the other guy that was there that had success too?
Hurst.
Hurst. He had some success in Baltimore as well. So I think that both those guys will thrive in that system. So I would say Gerald Everett would be a tight end that I would take, assuming that Greg Roman is going to stick to his guns, which by all accounts it sounds like he's going to.
Didn't Harbaugh and Roman have Vernon Davis in San Francisco too?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you saw what happened with Vernon Davis there as well.
Yep.
This one seems pretty easy. That's why I kind of went last. But Kellen Moore in Philadelphia, a guy you would want with the roster that's on board right now. I feel like this should be an automatic, unless you want to unless you want to go outside the box just to be different.
I was going to say Dallas Goedert, because
that's fair.
I felt like at times this past year they forgot about him.
They did.
And then they realized they forgot about him and thought, well, let's just pepper him with targets, even if he's not open. And then that didn't look good either. And I mean, Dalton Schultz had an okay year, I believe, with Kellen Moore. But again, that was when that team had like nobody else catching passes with CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb wasn't even having a good season that year. So
that was Michael Gallup's ACL year, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they really had anybody. And again, CD wasn't even having a good season that year, and I feel until the end. So yeah, I don't know that, because even in LA, Everett had
a solid year,
but it wasn't great.
No, but I mean,
it wasn't what people expected. But I feel like they used more than one tight end also but not in a we're going to put two tight ends out there. We're just going to rotate around these guys.
Yeah, it was Donald Parham.
Yeah, well, even maybe it was
But
three
he,
then, because I feel like there
but
was
he,
somebody else even.
but he was the red zone target guy.
He got hurt too. I feel like
Stone Smart was the other guy that came in afterwards.
I worry that you'll see
How's that
a
for you?
revolving.
Stone Smart. I just dropped a Stone Smart on a fantasy podcast. I dropped his name on a fantasy podcast. Like
I feel like at a point last year, people were picking him up.
I mean, I wasn't picking him up. He's a tight end. He can sit on the waiver wire for all I care. Because you know me and tight ends.
Your favorite position.
Oh, Jesus. And running back is starting to get even fucking worse. And I love running backs. Jesus. AJ Brown for me, just because I think you have to go with him by default. So if it wasn't AJ Brown, if that was too easy, too much of a Boston Scott. No, I'm just kidding. Dallas Goedert would be my other pick as well. So just because, like you said, it's, Kellen does use this tight end. So yeah, I mean, so I don't have anything else, Mark. Next week we will be back. Eli will not be with us for a little while. He has some things that he has to take care of, especially with work and other things. So we wish him, to be back here soon enough. We miss him. For anybody who was wondering why Eli was not on tonight. Let's see. Shady Sports, thank you again for giving us a platform, giving us an opportunity and chance to put this out here on your network. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, hit that notification button anytime you want to deal with Dynasty, C2C, Devi. Come back to us. Eventually, we will get into the reasons why I don't like tight end. I don't know. Maybe. I feel like it's going to pop up every episode. We'll talk about it.
Them.
I'm sure you could go back and hear the tight end rant between all three of us, really. Mark, I feel like you and I are probably closer to disliking the tight ends, and Eli's a little more on the.
No,
I don't know if
I actually think
I don't know.
Eli dislikes them more than I do. There's a time and place to draft a tight end properly.
Yeah, off the waiver wire.
No, they get overdrafted. That's my problem with them.
They definitely
get overdrafted.
They definitely get overdrafted. So again, off the waiver wire. There's a whole science behind it, though, Mark. We've discussed this. We know why.
Eli's working on that
every year. We know why.
One of the things he's working on for us is.
I feel like Eli likes the tight end position more than us, though, because I feel like he's the one that would be more apt to draft Travis Kelce in the first than us. I feel like he did that last year in a few leagues.
Well, but I can't blame him for that because I feel like we were finally getting to the point where I was getting, not in the first, but I was getting okay with Kelce in that 2-3 area, second, third round area, maybe mid second round area because of the numbers he was putting up.
Yeah.
But he proved this year. Just go with the wide receiver. Just a better option.
That tight end position, man, that is one rough position. Running backs getting there, though, for sure.
It's getting a little bit better, it seems. We seem to be getting at least more guys we can rely on from the tight end position. It seems.
That's my biggest thing is a reliable tight end. I understand the positional advantage of wanting a tight end that's going to score X amount of points or whatever it may be. It's just so unpredictable, man. I feel like Sam Laporta is going to go way too early this year.
Oh, he's going to, and that's the problem. They get overdrafted then. But so you look at a guy like George Kittle. He's probably a great person to look at. He's finished probably in the top 5 of tight ends most of his career.
Yeah.
And he has.
What does that mean, though?
Great games.
Right.
And he has terrible games.
Yeah.
There's
when that 5 for 43 line doesn't look great,
But if that's what he could almost do every game, I'd take it over the 1-for-1 games that he also puts up, or the 2-for-10 games that he also puts up.
Yeah,
it's the fact that for so many years, outside of your top 3 guys, the rest were so close and similar. You could end up with the tight end 13 scoring maybe a point less per game than the tight end 5, and I could get the tight end 13 in round 20.
I think it was
I made a
what
living
was it
on drafting Mark Andrews late
before he blew up?
before he blew up.
Tyler Higbee late before he blew up.
Tyler
or before
Higbee
he had a good
before
year.
he blew up. That's what I was always looking for, was what tight
I-
end was gonna.
When we started this podcast 2 years ago, we started this show 2 years ago. I believe Eli put together a really good tight end like graph over the last like 4 years of fantasy stuff. And if I remember the graph correctly, it was like the top 3 were really separated.
Okay.
And then from tight end 4 to tight end like 27, it was like a 18-point average differential.
Yeah.
I mean, that you can easily rotate a tight end position and streamline that position. Now, I will say, streamlining it, I probably wouldn't do as much anymore, because I feel like you said, there's a lot of reliable guys out there.
It's getting there,
I think that
hopefully.
I would be more apt to kind of get a guy that's on a team that, like Juwan Johnson. If you had Juwan Johnson starting for you for most of the year, were you really that upset in New Orleans this year? He's not George Kittle, but you were going to get point production from a position that could have been on a consistent
ceiling,
basis. Right.
Similar floor to George Kittle.
Yeah. And you would have gotten a points at a position on a more consistent basis than you would have probably any other tight end. Dalton Schultz in Houston this year, you probably could have got him like round 11. Were you really that upset starting him every week?
George Kittle was the tight end 5 this year.
Yeah.
Schultz ended up being the tight end 11.
Yep. Right where
They were only actually 70-point difference between them.
I mean, that's a pretty significant difference, but I wouldn't go out of my way to be like, you know what I mean, like
But
overly.
when you consider that, let's see, Kittle had games of 6, 7, 22, 29, 1, 16, 29, 27, 28, 6, things like that. And Dalton Schultz was more. Now, Schultz did miss, I think, a little bit of time, but.
Yeah, he missed a few games, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Now, it was very bad in the beginning, but new team. So the first 3 weeks were terrible. Then we had 15, 23, 18, a 3, a 34, a 15, a 13, a 1, an 11. I'll take the guy who's going to live in the 9 to 13 range every week over the guy who's going to score me 35 points every so often.
Every so often. Yep, for sure.
I mean, Taysom Hill was the 12th best tight end this year.
Well, he also gets stats from rushing and the receiving numbers, and it's just
12th.
Yeah, I mean,
Jonnu Smith
don't get me started.
Was 18,
Yeah,
and he was only 30 points away from Dalton Schultz.
Oh my God, who was 11? Yeah. Also, the top 12 tight ends does not mean they're tight end 1. So let's just stop.
No.
Let's just stop with that.
Top
nonsense.
6 at this point. Top 6.
I wouldn't even say
6.
top. Okay,
I'll go 6 now.
You go 6. I say 5. So
okay, but
anyways, to further my argument about tight ends that I was going to say next week,
save it for some other time.
I don't know. We just did it. So there's not much more to say. It's just garbage.
Now, Eli is working on getting us data, because he is our data guy, to showcase what the tight end position compared to the running backs and wide receiver position. Where, yes, those top 3 score similar to wide receiver 1 and 2 players.
All the time.
It's such a drop off from there. But you're taking these tight ends over wide receivers who are going to do it on a more consistent basis year over year, where the tight ends 1 year, Kelsey has literally been the only tight end who has been consistent year over year. Even guys like Mark Andrews and George Kittle and I don't know any other ones that could obviously even be in this
Dallas
conversation.
Goedert and Zach Ertz when the Ertz was there, and
Are just it's not consistent.
yep, not consistent at all. Next week, I think is it time to jump into our top 10 wide receiver rankings or top 20 wide receiver rankings dynasty moving forward? Do you think we should time for that?
What we did like the quarterbacks, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like we do with quarterbacks.
I think it's time. We'll
Time?
do the wide receivers first. We might go more than 20 wide receivers though, because it's a deep position. We'll see.
We'll look at it. We'll look at it because I don't want to do a 4-hour show though either, talking about wide receiver 25 moving forward. I mean, a lot of the names will cross over anyway, so I mean, I'm sure it will be.
But 25 is where it could be quite different.
That,
Maybe we'll do the top 24 because honestly, like you say with tight ends, where tight end ones are not the top 12, wide receiver ones are not the top 12, but in the opposite direction. Guys who are considered wide receiver twos because they're outside of the top 12 are probably not that far off, but that's because they're just as good, not because they suck.
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe 24. Maybe we'll do 24.
We'll do 24. Okay. We'll do the top 24 wide receivers next week. We'll get our rankings in for Dynasty. No rookies. Rookies will be later. We'll adjust those as we always do. That's it for Dynasty Academy tonight. Again, Shady Sports Network, shout out to you. Thank you so much. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you put the notifications on, as this will be show every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. You can always catch the reruns, as always, reruns, like it's a syndicated show. You can always catch us again, even after if you don't catch us live as well. I'm Michael Washington wearing a Barbie shirt. He's Mark Ongst wearing... I hit the button again. Is that a Buccaneer shirt you're wearing?
No, it's just red. It's a red shirt.
I was just red. No, just a red shirt. Okay, cool.
Red shirt,
That's going to do it for Dynasty Academy until next week. So long. Well, welcome to the Dynasty Academy. Michael Washington. Mark is being a pompous ass before we came on air, and